question, what is God? Good one. Many have tried to answer that down through the ages, and I don't pretend to be any better at answering it than anybody else, but perhaps one might look at a different perspective on what we think about God. So in order to go forward to answer the question, perhaps backtracking a little bit first. I've mentioned before that we all have this awareness that there's got to be something more. It's what drives people to strive for their best. It's what drives people to lift their game, to do heroic things at times, and at other times to go on these amazing searches and pilgrimages of whatever flavour all around the world, right through every time and age. Those stirrings, if you like, indicate to us deep within that there is more. And even ancient Stone Age man had the concept that there was something bigger than himself. They had the awareness that somewhere something had greater power than he perhaps had, or she perhaps had at that time. And thus this concept of what we term God arose. In ancient times, probably it was a tree. Maybe it later grew up to become a mountain. Maybe sometime later it became a distant place or a distant space. Our Australian Aboriginals talk about the sky, or the earth, or the God of the waters. Depending on our time and circumstance and place, we all had this concept of something with a greater consciousness, a greater awareness, and therefore more power than we had. And that concept has grown up as humanity has evolved. I guess we can all relate back to Sunday school days where you have the idea of God as an old man, a bit bigger than normal size, sitting on a golden throne with a very long beard because he's very wise, because he's been there a long time, and therefore we better be careful because he's watching. I think we have to begin to grow up our consciousness a little bit and begin to understand that the whole concept of God is the power that generates, operates, and ultimately destroys this universe, this particular system in which we live. Now you may remember some time back, I showed you another YouTube. This YouTube of our Earth's evolution. The Big Bang coming down into matter and our journey as we return back up to spirit. We're somewhere around about here now in terms of our journey, so we've come quite a long way. It's been a long and a very slow journey. But that journey has brought us greater consciousness. Compared to way back here, we understand so much. We understand how the world works, we can understand things about energy, time and space. We've even evolved to the point where we can put humans into space and bring them back. That's a pretty big achievement, something the caveman could never have done. So our concept of God has had to grow along with that concept of knowing more. I must say the two people I frequently quote in terms of God, and one is Alice Bailey, who wrote for Dwakul, the Tibetan master, and she just says, God is the sum total of all consciousness. Personally, that's probably my best definition of what is God. The sum total of all consciousness. So you could say God is consciousness. The one I like to parallel beside that is one I borrowed from Deepak Chopra. He spells God as G.O.D, an acronym for generative, in other words creative, bringing things into being. Operative, in other words keeping it running, keeping the systems going, keeping everything balanced. And then destructive, when things have gone past their use-by date, as so many things have. Dinosaurs don't really fit in our world anymore except in toy shops. So they're past their use-by date and time for destruction. I think those two definitions rather bring together the best possible awareness I can think of as God. Because if we go back to ancient times, God was just like us, only a bit bigger. Hence the old man on a golden throne, who was a bit taller than we were. But not too much taller, otherwise we wouldn't be able to relate. I think when we begin to understand some of the secrets of the universe, when science shows us some of the inner workings and the systems that are in operation in the magnificent magnitude of this system we live in, we can begin to see that God has to be a bit bigger than an old man on a throne. How did it all work? How did it all come to be? Well, I've got a graphic, you might say, for how I believe this all works. I'd like to share it with you. You've all seen this before, I know. Good old sparklers. That to me is a perfect example of God. A point in the centre of a great space, symbolised by a circle, and the consciousness moving out from that great space as far as it possibly can go. As you can see, some of those little stars go way beyond the diagram area there. That's the consciousness that seeds into space, creating the YouTube that we were talking about before. That consciousness going out into space puts a spark of divinity, or godness if you like, into every atom of being. And those little atoms of being are the things which are seeking to return back to the centre of that space. Hence our YouTube here is literally just one bit of that space. If you want the idea of God, think spiritual consciousness, think spirit, back at the source. So we come from the centre, we go out to the periphery, and we return back to the source, back to the wholeness, the oneness, that sense of belonging that we all want to be part of. Think about that as a definition for a change.